morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told how to voice the radio. So today, we finally got our look at Blastoise VMAX. We knew we were getting a Blastoise VMAX. We had been told we're getting a Blastoise VMAX. And the good news is that this morning, it has gone and been officially revealed, so we can finally talk about Blastoise VMAX. And I should mention our translations come from the lovely Antoine Boulet, and honestly at this stage I'm kind of assuming you already knew that. Now if we start off having a look at Blastoise V, because we need to start with the little dude first, although it's really not that little. 220 HP is high, quite frankly. That's a large amount of HP. We got a retreat cost of free, which is in that awkward middle ground between buff padding and free retreat with air balloon. It will reduce your retreat cost, but it won't actually make it free. And the weakness to lightning is a weird one. It really depends on how good you think Pikachu and Zekrom is right now. Lots of people still think it's really good, in which case bad weakness. But if you're one of those people that doesn't think it's that good, not such a bad weakness. Although I still think Pikachu VMAX is going to be a really good card moving forward. And obviously that is also hitting you for weakness, so could be an awkward weakness is what I'm saying. But you are a water Pokemon. That means you can accelerate energy with Frostmoth, and I think there's a pretty good chance you're going to want to. Then you've got Capacious Bucket, which lets you search out 2 water energy from your deck and put them into your hand, which is pretty good. And then we got that new Nessa card coming that lets you pick up 4 in any combination of water Pokemon and water energy from your discard pile and put them into your hand. So in terms of being a water Pokemon right now, in terms of getting energy on and having energy available, it's not a bad time to be a water Pokemon. Now if we start off with the attacks here, the first attack is, shall we say, rather underwhelming. What we've got here is 1 water energy, 30 damage. And I don't think anyone is actually going to argue that this is a good attack. I think the best thing I can say about this is that it is an attack. And I don't mean that to sound as flippant as it probably does. What I mean is, it gives you an option. If you go second, you're allowed to attack. But you're not going to have a Frostmoth up to accelerate extra energy. And you're not going to have anything else going. So it's one of those, well, you know what? Might as well. It's not a great attack, and it's not something to get hideously excited about. But it is still an attack. It's something you can use. Far better is the second attack, which the lovely Antoine Boulet has translated as Torrent Cannon. Free energy, 200 damage. This Pokemon cannot use Torrent Cannon during your next turn. Alrighty then. Now the free energy is honestly fine. I've already mentioned Frostmoth as a nice little example. We've also got Turbo Patch as an option, because this isn't a Pokemon GX. I mean, getting free energy on shouldn't be particularly difficult here. And 200 damage is pretty good. Worth pointing out, of course, we didn't mention earlier, you are hitting weakness on fire Pokemon, like Centiskorch VMAX, like Reshiram and Charizard, etc. And you will get a very easy one-hit KO on them. If you're hitting for weakness, I mean, if a Centiskorch VMAX has got a Big Charm on and 2 Heat Fire Energy, it will end up with 390 HP, and you'll still be getting a one-hit KO here. So, in terms of hitting for weakness, you're absolutely fine. If you're not hitting for weakness, 200 is actually kind of an awkward number, because too many Pokemon V are running around like Zacian with 220, like Blastoise itself, incidentally. And that's not quite good enough. So I don't think, if you're not hitting for weakness, this is amazing. Sure, you'll get single prize Pokemon, that is awesome. And you'll get Pokemon that are weak, again, pretty awesome. But I'm not sure you're going to be getting everything. Having said that, I like it more than Lapras V's attack. Lapras V for 4 energy does 210 and puts 2 in your hand. And I like putting 2 energy in your hand in a Frostmoth deck, because they're easily reattached. And it means that if you get KO'd, you don't lose the energy. It's in your hand ready to go. But it's an extra energy just for an extra 10 damage, which I don't think is particularly worth it. So I'd rather have this than Lapras V. And, I mean, in terms of Milotic V here, for free energy, They do 10 damage plus 50 more for each water energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. So unless they've got a retreat cost of 4, you're getting a better attack here than you would be with Milotic V, which is essentially to say, fine, this attack might not be perfect, but it's actually better than the alternatives if you stack this up next to other basic water Pokemon V. It honestly comes out looking pretty nice. I mean, the other one we could compare it to is Dreadnought V, but I'm fine. Dreadnought V stops them attacking, but then it also only does 130 damage, so I don't know if that's exactly a great comparison. And similarly, Inteleon V, 130 damage, and they reveal their hand. You see where we're going with this? In terms of Water Pokemon V, this is the best option we've seen, and that's rather lovely. But what about the VMAX? I like the VMAX. The VMAX makes me very happy indeed. Now, we go up to 330 HP, which is not quite the highest we've seen. We've seen 340, but make no mistake about it, this is still a large amount of HP. We've still got the same annoying retreat cost of 3. We've still got the same weakness to lightning, which might not be ideal. But we've got some really, really nice attacks here. For the same free water energy as you were using on Blastoise, you do 120 damage, search your deck for up to 3 water energy, and attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like. This is very, very reminiscent of Arceus and Dialga and Palkia. Now, to be fair, they did 150 damage, not 120 damage, so they win in that regard. And they could attach it to any of their Pokemon, active or bench, and it was any energy. So you do fall down in that regard. You're doing 30 less damage, you're only getting water energy, and you're only attaching to the bench, not in any way you like. But we have another damaging attack, which essentially makes up for it. ADP's got the phenomenal Redonkulous GX attack, but in terms of actual damaging attacks, this is the only one they've got. I do like it more than Pikachu and Zekrom, though. Yes, Pikachu and Zekrom again do 150, which does seem to be the standard for this kind of attack, which does mean we're falling short. But Pikachu and Zekrom, all free energy, have to go onto one Pokemon, so I like this more. And honestly, you've got Frostmoth, and a lot of the time what your opponent is going to want to do is go after your Frostmoth to stop your energy acceleration. But if you use Frostmoth to get a single Blastoise rolling, you don't need your Frostmoth really anymore. And honestly, with Turbo Patch, there's an argument you don't even need Frostmoth. Now let's be clear, I still think we should use Frostmoth, but I'm saying, you know, in Eternal, if you go first, attach one turn, attach the next turn, if you can hit one Turbo Patch in the first 2 turns, and then VMAX, you're basically set for the game. So you, I don't know, run like a 1-1 or 2-2 Frostmoth line. You run quite a thin, easy Frostmoth line because you feel fairly confident that it's not going to make or break the deck. And then, after all of that, and there's quite a lot of good we've already talked about, we've got the actual best attack and the best reason to play the card. Max Bombarding. For 4 water energy, you do 220 damage. And then you do 30 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Well, this is phenomenal. Like, I know 220 itself isn't necessarily getting that many one-hit KOs, but 220 does cross that threshold. 220 crosses that threshold of I'm one-hit KOing Pokemon Vs. Zacian V, 220... totally going down. Eternatus V, also 220, also going down. There will be very rare ones like Zamazenta, although even with Zamazenta, a single Vitality Band and you'll be fine. But do remember you're hitting the bench. So essentially here, if you can just KO the first Pokemon in one hit, then the second attack really does 250, because you'll already have put 30 damage on them. Except now might be a good time to remind you about Longview Scope. Longview Scope does, well, it says that your attacks that hit the bench do 30 more to Pokemon GXs and Vs. So now with a Longview Scope on, you're doing 220 to the active and 60 to each of 2 Pokemon Vs and GXs. And this is huge, because think about something like Mewtwo and Mew, or think about the aforementioned ADP. Once you hit them for 60, Then 220 will get a KO. That's 280 in total. So now you are actually hitting the numbers. And as a side note here, I do think in the current metagame, long view scope is absolutely essential for Blastoise, because it means you get a KO on something like a Zacian, and then next turn you can one-hit KO the ADP, because you've already put 60 on using this first attack, which is really kind of redonkulous. And this is why I love Blastoise. I think the energy is eminently payable. I think the 200 damage on the Blastoise V is quite nice. I think the attack that does 120 and accelerates energy. I mean, imagine if you can catch your opponent with something like a Jirachi in the active, some Pokemon they're using to set up, and you get a KO and then you start accelerating energy. That's pretty awesome. And then you've got this big attack that gets one-hit KOs on pretty much all the relevant Pokemon V, while also setting up bigger Pokemon. And it's just getting a little bit ridiculous at this stage. I mean, Lapras VMAX hasn't seen a huge amount of play, but I've bumped into it occasionally. I've bumped into it a couple times, practicing, doing these events to try and qualify for the Players' Cup. And for 4 energy, Lapras VMAX does 210. For 4 energy, this does 220 plus 30 to each of 2 bench Pokemon, assuming you don't have long view scope, which you may well have. And all of a sudden, you're going, oh yeah, well this is so much better than Lapras V. Plus it has an extra 10 HP if that's what you're into, and honestly, you probably should be. Plus, we've already mentioned Blastoise V is better than Lapras V, and you can see where my excitement comes in here. I still think there is an argument for Inteleon VMAX as a Water VMAX. Free energy 160 plus 60 to one of your opponent's bench. But come on. Blastoise does hit 60 to the bench, although you have to split it between 2 Pokemon. It's not 60 to 1, it's 30 to 2. But you're also hitting an extra 60 damage. So yeah, I feel pretty confident saying this is the best Water VMAX we've seen so far. And given that Blastoise was blatantly the best of the Gen 1 first partner Pokemon, and yes, I feel very strongly about that, this seems like the kind of deck we should all be having a little bit of a play with. I'm giving Blastoise 4 wussies, and if anything, I think that might be underselling it a little bit. I really do think this is a phenomenal card, and I do think we are going to see this rolling around. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.